Welcome to another live episode, Pound for Pound Box Report. After taking last week off, we are back, episode 419. I'm your host, Michael. Joining me this week, usual cast of characters, Gail from nyfights.com, Daniel from 4 Boxing News and the Inquirer. What's going on, lady and gent?
Well, if you can't stomach watching any more football, we're here for you. Let's talk some boxing.
Indeed. For those who are not watching Monday Night Football, and looks like could possibly be terrible news when it comes to the New York Jets and the injury to Aaron Rodgers. Please listen to us. Check us out, talking all things to sweet science. For those who don't know about Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report, live YouTube show, podcast, website, etc., talking all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, it will get discussed right here. Uh, if you want to check out all things regarding the Pound for Pound Box Report, please check out the site, p4pboxingreport.com. If you wish to email us any thoughts, suggestions, questions, etc., um, you can do so p4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com on the site. You can check out where to check out Pound for Pound Box Report all over the socials, links to the YouTube channel, links to the Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, IG page. Also on the site, you can have a couple of links where you can donate, Cash Me and PayPal donation links. Let donation be the best nation, excuse me. It wouldn't matter to us if it's $1, $2, $5. Um, if you have any spare change on hand and you wish to contribute, it really help us out in terms of behind the scenes and production, all that. If you're checking us out on YouTube, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Help with the overall algorithms. And when it comes to monetization, last but certainly not least, on the site, please check out the link to the BODI body, formerly known as Beach Body on Demand. If you're looking to get your body right, as we inch closer and closer to the end of 2023, please check out Body uh, fitness programs for any and all suitable interests. If you're looking to lift weights, get your weightlifting, get your brolic on. Check out programs like Body Beast, Lift 4, and the updated version of Lift 4, Lift More. If you're looking for real challenging hits, hardcore workouts, please check out programs like 6 Weeks of the Work. If you're looking for a morning program, please check out programs like Morning Meltdown, um, other programs like Pio, Bar Blend, the P90X series 1, 2, and 3. They still work very well and effective. If you're looking for a boxing specific program, please check out 10 Rounds, and that is a 6 week program, 3 days of boxing based cardio, 2 days of weightlifting resistance work. At the very least, check out Body and take advantage of the 14-day free trial. And that is for 14 days, you get free access to any and all programs on Body, including the um, exclusive workout from the new program, Chop Wood, Carry Water, their sample workout. Because I am a member of Body, for full disclosure, I've went through the program a couple of times. I really like it. A different type of workout series than your normal fitness routine fitness program. So there you go. Please check out the link to Body over on Pound for Pound Boxing Report on P4P boxingreport.com. Because we were off last week, I'm going to begin the show by recapping a fight that took place that we were not have not been able to recap yet. A couple of fights, um, the rematch in London, Gale, the headliner from not this past week but the prior week, the rematch between Liam Smith and Chris Eubank. They fought earlier this year. Beefy Smith scoring a surprising fourth round stoppage over Eubank Jr. Eubank Jr. He swore revenge. He said he was the better fighter, uh, and he really showed that in the rematch. As this was a different Chris Eubank Jr. Gail, much more disciplined, right? Um, I did not know he had such a good jab. He has not shown that he had such a standout jab up to this point in his career, right? Uh, Patience, discipline. a lot of people giving the credit to his new trainer, Bo McIntyre. We will talk about Mo back in a bit and the trouble he got into after the fight. But Eubank Jr. scored a knockdown in route to a 10-round stoppage win. And dare I say, Gail, all things considering, was that the best performance of Chris Eubank Jr.'s career?
Absolutely. There's not even a question that it was his best performance to date. There were a lot of people that figured we would be seeing a rerun of the first fight in which Liam Smith scored a pretty significant upset. Credit to Eubank, he decided that things were broken and they needed to be fixed. He did give himself much time to fix things. He only let his original trainer, Roy Jones Jr., go barely a month before the fight, brought on Brian McIntyre. How much credit you can give to Bo Mac? In 4 weeks? Who knows? But maybe the move alone reset Eubank's mindset as to what he needed to do. And he executed whatever the game plan was, whether it was part of what we saw or simply he needed to make that change, kind of, dunk himself mentally under a bucket of cold water. It worked. It certainly, Bomac probably got him out of this mindset that he's had for so long that he was a mini Roy Jones Jr. He's not. He's not. He's Chris Eubank. Nobody's a mini Roy Jones Jr. And as great a fighter as Roy was during his Hall of Fame career, his role as trainer has never matched the level of greatness he had as a fighter. He can't remake guys in his image. It's just not possible. So Eubank did exactly the right thing, and wow, what a performance. He let it go. He was by far the busier fighter. It was the last thing Smith expected, clearly. And so I'm going to give at least some credit to Bomac, and it might not have been as much the physical training, the skills, the techniques as getting Eubank's head straight and having someone in his corner who could give him specific, clear direction during the fight. And now he's got a lot of choices. And with the middleweight division being so empty of talent, he's got some options. If he can make 160, if he can't, super middleweight is cracking right now. So he has a very interesting future ahead of him. Of course, we all know what fight everyone's going to want to talk about. And for British fight fans, there's really only one fight, and we all know who it is.
Indeed, Daniel. Indeed, Gail. And I'll go to you, Daniel. Now that we had some time to kind of rehash what went down 2 weeks ago, right? What was the thing that surprised you, if you were surprised, about Eubank's performance against Smith?
The fact that he actually had a disciplined game plan. That's unfortunately been Eubanks' main flaw. And part of that is training. Part of it is being trained by Roy Jones and ultimately trying to become Roy Jones. Roy Jones is a natural talent who had a great skill set, but it's a skill set that can never really be completely duplicated, no matter how many times he's trying to with fighters. And Eubank was really trying to, but in this instance, he knew he had somebody that he was beating fairly well in the first fight until that shot that knocked him down. And he handled it better with poise. He used the jab. He used his distance. He was a completely disciplined fighter with a disciplined game plan. And this shows that Eubank, there is actual skill there. It's not a situation where he's just living off his father's name. He actually does have a bit of skill. He does have a bit of discipline. Now the main situation is going to be is can he keep the momentum going with Bomac, especially like you mentioned that there might be some issues with Bomac in the UK.
Oh, my bad, y'all. I was on mute. My bad. Let's talk future here in terms of Eubank. Gail, you kind of hinted at kind of the big fight, quote unquote, for Chris Eubank Jr. And that is a domestic showdown with Conor Ben. They talked about they was on the verge that fight was on the verge of happening last fall until Ben got in trouble testing positive for illegal substances. He's still going through that hassle, trying to get back in the ring and whatnot. Talks are already heating up that fight get made again. But for me, when I look at Eubank, he's approaching his mid 30s, right? I get the matchup with Ben from a financial perspective, big bout over in the UK, but given how he looked in this matchup, given the dearth of talent now at 160 pounds, why not put him in a world title shot, right? Uh, you got John Beck, who's WBO champion. He's going to fight in a unification bout later on this fall. I think next month, I believe, no October, November. Uh, you got Jamal Charlo, who says he's going to return to the ring at the end of the year. I would not mind seeing Eubank in a fight against Charlo. Uh, he's for years he's talked about fighting Gennady Golovkin. That's not going to happen. Should he go for the money when it comes to Ben, or should he go for glory here and finally, at long last, get this cat in the ring, get this cat a world title shot?
Well, that's the proper fight. That's the legacy fight. That's if he really wants to challenge himself. However, he's 35 years old. I believe he's 35 years old. Um, he's got fewer years ahead of him than behind him. And the big money fight is Conor Ben. And we all know it. Eddie Hearn, immediately upon Eubank's victory, started talking again about Eubank Ben. And mark my words, that fight's going to take place. They're going to figure out a way to do it. If they've got to put it in the Middle East, they will, because there's money to be made and boxing is a business. And Charlo has been so damned inactive. He's tied up with Canelo right now. He, depending on the outcome, he may not want to go back to 160. The younger Charlo is, MIA at the moment, the smaller Charlo, I should say. It's just, I take it back. That's the other way around. It's Jermell who's going to fight Canelo. The middleweight Jamal, yeah, he is just, he's missing in action. So he's certainly far from a sure thing. And so I really would not blame Eubank, although it's not my favorite. I don't think that Conor Ben should be rewarded after his mishaps, his misbehavior. But that's the fight we're going to get. Mark my words.
What say you, Daniel?
Yeah, you kind of fall into that area because you're falling to that age. Yeah, you can try to put him against Maul, but unfortunately, even though how many times have we heard Maul saying he's coming back to the ring, and then we still haven't seen him yet. Unfortunately, Jabanek would be interesting because we've seen some vulnerabilities in Jabanek, but there might be a situation that Eubanks may not know about because remember, right after the fight, he thought he was calling out the person who was holding the belts. Gennady Golovkin. The Baroness, nobody told him that Gennady dropped all those belts.
And he's basically in retirement at this point, Triple G.
Yeah, and so there, like I said, those are good options to have if you want to actually get a world title and actually, let's say, get that check mark. Because people are going to compare you to your father, unfortunately. However, unfortunately, also he's at a point where he's probably going to need to make the, as bad as it sounds, that's got to be Ben.
Yeah, unfortunately, um, I have to stubbornly agree. Honestly, in truth, I don't want to see that fight because I get it from the UK perspective, but otherwise, what's the point? What's the point? Ben, what has he really proven at this point of his career? Who has he really fought? No one, in my opinion, right? No one in their prime, I should say. Let me correct that. And I would like to see this version of Eubank against a Jamal Charlo on the comeback at the end of the year. Since Maul is saying he's going to fight again by the end of 2023, why not put him in the ring against Eubank and see what they do? I think at given the state of both men, it would be a fairly interesting fight. But yeah, money talks in this game, and more than likely, up next for Chris Eubank Jr. is a family showdown, family rivalry with one Conor Ben. On the undercard, Daniel, you had Mikaela Mayer, who's much of her career has been at 130 and 135, right? But she's kind of making a physical transformation in her career, um, moving up in weight. She announced last month that the eventual goal is to move up at welterweight and fight for a world welterweight title. Fought at 100 at a catch weight of 142 against Silvia Bertot, beat her pretty easily. After the fight, Mayer's called for a fight against Natasha Jonas. Jonas was doing ringside commentary for this entire card for Sky, I believe it was, and there's already discussions of this fight happening. Your thoughts on how Mayer looked from a physical standpoint as she's moving up in weight, and your thoughts on a potential fight with Jonas, who had a fantastic year in 2022, has yet to fight this year in 2023, Daniel. But even though she has the belt at 54 pounds still, she recently won a baby belt at 147. That welterweight seems to be a future. And from the look of it, the fact that she was at this fight, it seems like all roads are leading to a Jonas Mayer showdown at some point in 2024, Daniel.
We are missing Daniel at the moment,
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know he was
who had to take a call. You know, we've all got lives going on. So let me step in. Mayer looked great at this weight. She is very tall for the weight class. She's 5'9". So she is slowly working her way up to welterweight by design. And she looked good at 140. 147 is a bit of a jump, but the women tend to need to move around between weight divisions more so than the men at the top levels because of a shallower talent pool, if you will. But it's been no mistake that this has been Mayer's third straight fight in the UK, in England. She's building a fan base. They have a lot of respect for Olympic competitors. She's an Olympic competitor. Jonas was sitting right there. There were some other potential opponents also sitting there. Lauren Price, who's a rising star in UK women's boxing, she was also there. So I do think you'll see a Jonas Mayer fight next. That's a great fight. Good for Mikaela for challenging herself, rising up in weight divisions to sort of carve out a new identity for herself. I mean, she even has sort of a very different new haircut. And I'm just going to say it as a woman. You change your appearance fairly radically. That is a complete change of attitude. I like it. And it's a good thing she isn't waiting around for Alicia Baumgartner because I think that would be a dead end road. She's been smart enough not to say anything, but I can only imagine what she's thinking right now.
A bit of correction on my part. One, I said that Jonas hasn't fought this year. She indeed has. She won the vacant IBF belt at 147 pounds, stopping Candy Wyatt. That's number one. Number two, Mayer hasn't said much. Mayer has spoken out on the issue, on this controversy with Baumgartner. For those who are unaware, Baumgartner tested positive for banned substances prior to her last fight, a rematch win over Linda Dartow back in June. Just basically saying that she's disappointed in what happened to Baumgartner. Kind of suspected that maybe Baumgartner this is not maybe a one-time occurrence for Baumgartner, and also she called for stricter regulations and more punishment for fighters who get caught. Right, that was her basic response. Didn't go out of her way to bash Baumgartner too hard, as we all know. Baumgartner and Mayer are not the best of friends. Not even friends, close to it. They're rivals. They go constantly back and forth towards each other on social media and on interviews. Mayer kept it very professional, and kudos to her for doing so. Let's talk about a potential Jonas Mayer matchup, since Jonas is a champion. Jonas is older. I think she's 38, 39. Mayer is taller and longer. But the thing for me, Gail, is that Jonas has kept her power as she moved up in weight, right? She won the junior middleweight title by stoppage. She won the vacant welterweight title by stoppage. The question is, as Mayer is moving up and she looks full and healthy at the higher weight, right? How do you think she will deal with the power in the left-handed stance of Jonas, who's not just a puncher, given her amateur pedigree, been in the Olympics? I think she was a silver medalist. Correct me if I'm wrong. She has skills along with the punch.
Well, we know for a fact that Mayer can take a punch. Look how well she stood up to Hamadouche in a complete war. She got blasted and she did not waver. So I think she's got enormous confidence in her chin. I think that she'll approach Jonas much as she approached her amateur fights. She is a good boxer. The issue is that her technical skills don't particularly make for a very entertaining fight for the fans, but they do give her, wins in the win column. And even if she can't avoid Jonas power punching, she can take a shot. It is going to be in a higher weight division, but I feel very confident that she'll be fine there. She will be the B side in the champion's country. That's really going to be a challenge. Winning on the cards is going to be difficult. I'll tell you what, I would love to see her pressure Jonas and say, listen, Amanda Serrano is going to fight a 12-round, 3-minute rounds title defense. What do you say? Let's go for it and let's see what she says. Then it's going to rely just as much on conditioning as it is power. And in that case, may or may have the upper hand on the older fighter, the more experienced fighter. I like the matchup. I like the two-nation rivalry. I like putting it where women's boxing has the full support of the fans. It gives her a payday that she probably can't get at this point in the United States. Just like we're talking about Chris Eubank Jr., there's some of that truth there for Mikaela too. And she does have, she won't be the fighter with the biggest fan base if she's standing across from Jonas, but she'll have some.
Indeed, I see Daniel's back with us. We're talking Mikaela Mayer, who won a couple of weeks back on the undercard of Smith and Eubank Jr. too. The possibility we're talking, we're kind of having an early breakdown of a possible fight between Mayer and Jonas. Of course, as you know, Daniel, Mayer has called for a fight against Jonas. She says she wants Jonas next. Your thoughts, your early breakdown of a potential bout between Natasha Jonas and Mikaela Mayer at 147.
That is, that's probably pretty dicey for Mikaela based on when it came to this fight, because she did fairly well. Like I said, she did fairly well in this fight. Like, she hadn't landed the combinations. She took a lot of shots on it, but you could also tell that the power that she had at 130, unfortunately, doesn't look like it can starting to slowly translate in the upper weight divisions, and that's the big issue. The main thing that Mikaela has, luckily, is her height advantage compared to a lot of fighters. That could be the key playing into when some fighting Jonas, who naturally is a welterweight. The big issue is going to be for me is it's the same thing pretty much like what question is with Mel when he's going to fight Canelo. Even though your walking weight is that amount, like but in case for Mikaela 147, even though her walking weight is that, it's something different when you have to actually fight in that walking weight a lot of times, because your body's used to train to get below that weight. So we have to see how that shapes up, but she can use her reach advantage, and she can use weight advantage. That's the keys to do when fighting somebody like Jonas. But you now have to see if you can find a way for your power to translate at welterweight, because so far, unfortunately, it does not look like it is. That could just be because she's faced better competition, and that can get something that can be better with time, but she's more acclimated to 147. But that's probably the biggest key. Can she carry her speed and the power that she had at 130 to 147? Because that's the main thing she needs to do against Jonas.
Shout out to Mitch Pryor for checking us out live. Funny comments here. He says he has skills. He can watch news, NFL, and this podcast at the same time. He contains multitudes. Last question regarding Jonas before we move on, because we got a lot of news to cover, right? Are you surprised that it seems like she's going to take a bout with Mayer at 147 as opposed to engaging in a unification bout with her countrywoman Terry Harper at 154? This is for the both of you.
Well, why wouldn't she fight an American rather than a countrywoman? At first, there's some solidarity there. I think she takes the Mayer fight. If she wins, she takes on Harper, and that's the right order, assuming she can beat Mikaela.
It's not surprising in a way, like when it comes to fighters of domestic rivalry, you normally want to lean towards that direction. But the main thing you also gotta see is where can you actually get this fight, make more money? Because it looks like Mikaela is making the gamble that she'll make more money in the UK fighting Jonas. But who knows if unfortunately if the whole Bumgarner situation settles itself, you might have the fight in the United States, and it may actually be entertaining. But probably they're weighing in to see which one is going to be the dollar sense, and they're probably thinking, especially with Terry Harper looking a lot more comfortable at 154. They probably say like, let's go after the person that's trying to come up in weight rather than us come up in weight versus somebody that's very comfortable in that weight.
Oh, from a money perspective, I don't think it's a gamble at all. Vis-a-vis Mayer, right? As Gail noted, England is kind of becoming her second home. Her last three fights have been over in Great Britain. The biggest fight of her career, the close loss to Bumgarner, that took place in England. Uh, there's a reason, indirect note, that Clarissa Shields, her fight with Savannah Marshall took place in England. They invest more from a money perspective. When it comes to money, have a greater investment in women's boxing than they do here in the United States. So Mayer is no fool. She sees that. She sees the earning potential there over in the UK, and she's making a name for herself, and she's taking advantage of it. Jonas, she's a significant figure over in England, arguably the most popular women's fighter in England specifically. I know some will say Katie Taylor, but Katie Taylor is not technically from England, right? Neither is um, the lady who beat Katie Taylor, Chantel Cameron. Well, Chantel Cameron is from England, but I would argue that Jonas is a more popular figure, more popular fighter. So Mayer sees that and is like, okay, if it means if I have to go to England to fight Natasha Jonas for the bigger money, why not do it? It makes sense. So I wouldn't look at it as a gamble in terms of the fight itself. Assuming that Jonas doesn't get old in one night, I will make her the favorite. I think that her power, her technical ability, her ring smarts, and the fact that she can move, um, and I think coming down even further, coming down to 147 pounds, she would be stronger, just as strong as Mayer in there. I would give her the advantage, but Mikaela Mayer has a heck of a shot, particularly if she uses her height and her length. Uh, but at the end of the day, it's a viable fight. It's a significant matchup when it comes to women boxing. It's something I want to see, and I think fans and followers of women's boxing would like to see. And again, all signs are that it's going to happen at some point, first quarter, first half, I'd say, of next year. Let's move on to some news here, and it's going to again a lot of news we're going to talk about, include some stuff I didn't put in the description that we will discuss. Let's start with Prograis and Devin Haney, right? This bout earlier this summer was announced it was going to happen in October. The problem was, Daniel, that Haney did not sign his end of the contract. Um, Prograis threatened that he was going to move to and fight and have move for other options through Adrian Broner's name in the mix. Why? No one wants to see that. Well, over the weekend, an announcement was made that the fight was finalized for December 9th. Going to happen in Haney's hometown of San Francisco. Are you? I'm glad the fight is happening, Daniel. It's a very good matchup. But are you surprised that Prograis, even though he's the champion, he agreed to fight in Haney's hometown, going to agree to go to the Bay Area to fight the lightweight champ?
Actually, I'm not, because the pattern, unfortunately, with Prograis, especially when he fights in his home area in Louisiana, the pattern seems to be that he doesn't fare as well fighting in front of the home crowd versus fighting on the road. And in this case, they said, you're still the champion. Yeah, you're going to Haney's backyard, but at the same time, you're the more established fighter at 140. You have the belt at 140, and you have been, in the Prograis case, you have been dying to get a shot like this for a good while. A marquee fight against a top tier opponent. Devin Haney is that, even if he's mainly coming up from 135. So that's not surprising to me, because to me, they say Prograis does a little bit better being a road warrior than fighting mainly in the Louisiana area. And he beat somebody in that area at 140. Considering what's happening with 140 right now, you're gonna, like I said, it puts him a little bit better place, so he can go on the road a little bit more or get a little bit more comfortable to fighting in Louisiana. But at the end of the day, this is also a situation where this is probably the condition that Haney's team wanted if they wanted this fight. And like I said, Prograis has been dying to get a marquee opponent for so long in his career, because he's been at 140 for a good long while, even to the point where he probably, in hindsight, may have wanted to move up to welterweight probably a year or two ago. But he never had that one opponent that you can say that's a top tier guy that fought Regis Prograis, and Regis Prograis won. Devin Haney's had a chance to do that.
Regis Prograis is a WBC champion at 140 pounds. The news regarding a WBO champion, Teofimo Lopez Gale, as the sanctioning body, the WBO, has named him their super champion. I get why they do it. I get the rationale behind them naming him super champion, but I hear the news, and my response is like, I'm not moved by anything. Sure, it puts him in a position to become mandatory at 147 should he decide to move up in weight, could put him in line for a shot against Terrence Crawford should he move up to welterweight. But I'm so indifferent on Teofimo, given his comments and whatnot, claiming that he was going to retire after his win over Josh Taylor when we all knew that he wasn't. I'm like, whatever.
This is maneuvering by the sanctioning body, by the WBO's rules. If Lopez is a champion at a lower weight division and wants to move up to challenge, he becomes a mandatory. And that's all it is. They're shuffling chess pieces around on the board to put him in position to fight Crawford for that belt. And if you look at the other potential opponents, we're not going to see Boots Ennis or Virgil Ortiz, who claims he's doing a lot better and he's back in the gym. I just don't see those fights happening. So who's left? Well, Lopez fight, assuming there's, depending on what happens with a rematch with Spence, which most fans are not real enthusiastic about. What's the next biggest fight? Love it or hate it, it's probably Teofimo.
But I like to see him do work at 140 though. I would mind seeing him fight the winner of Haney and Prograis, right? He likes to talk about himself as this great standout fighter, as this future Hall of Famer. If he retires, right? If he quote unquote retire right now, he's already in Hall of Fame. Prove it, bruh. Because you do a lot. Yeah, you got the win over Taylor, but doggone it, you do a lot more talking than anything else.
Once again, it is by far a bigger money fight for him to fight Bud than Haney.
He ain't beating Bud. We know this.
He's probably not beating Haney either. So if you're going to lose to one or the other, take the fight where you get paid the most.
I guess. I guess. Get both of you into this discussion. Stephen A. Smith of First Take Off. One of his more infamous quotes is, if it looks like a duck, it sounds like a duck. It ain't a damn mongoose, right? Well, boxing fans, well, how can I set this up? The WBC, about a month ago, early last month, basically stripped Haney of the WBC 135-pound belt, named him champion in recess. They ordered mandatory challenger Stevenson to fight the highest available challenger. Stevenson and Frank Martin agreed to fight for the vacant belt. Well, over the weekend, Martin basically walked away from negotiations. Now, boxing fans on social media and on message boards and on chat rooms all over have gone out and called, claiming that Martin is ducking a fight with Stevenson. Frank Martin went on Twitter and said that he's not ducking at all. I'll pose the question to you, Gail and Daniel. Is Frank Martin ducking that smoke with one Shakur Stevenson?
We are in absolutely no position to know for sure. We know what it looks like. We can speculate. And, lack of knowledge of any facts never stops anyone on Boxing X/Twitter from rendering an opinion, right? And Martin had said very little other than "I don't duck shit" was his one and only post. I imagine, despite the fact that he was reported, again, no proof of getting, his first $1 million payday, I'm imagining there's a pretty big disparity between what Stevenson's getting paid and what Martin's getting paid. I think this is probably a negotiation ploy to get himself a little more money. Again, seems like we have a common theme here. If he's going to go up against Stevenson and lose his undefeated record, which I'm sure he would, he wants to at least earn a good payday for it. The whole circumstances around the fight, putting it on during what's going to be Formula One weekend in Las Vegas, with that event taking by far the lion's share of attention in town. It just seems like a really odd time to do it. From a practical perspective, the traffic along the strip and the surface streets leading onto the strip are going to be an absolute crazy town nightmare. I would in no way want to drive toward any of the venues in that area while Formula One is there. I wouldn't even consider it. I wouldn't even take an Uber over there. So I kind of don't get it. I'm just not sure whether there's enough bandwidth on anyone's mind to handle it. The whole thing is just very odd to me. So, let's see how it shakes out. But the truth is, we have no idea what's going on. We're hearing a lot of chatter. I'm sure Stevenson is frustrated. He'd like to get something on the books. So, he is lashing out. He's mad, frustrated about it. But, I think this is all about business as the bottom line.
Your reaction, Daniel, to the news of Frank Martin apparently walking away during negotiations for a fight against Stevenson. Of course, the word on the street was it's going to happen, as Gail said, during race weekend, the weekend of the 16th of November.
Well, first, like I said, this is for 135, right? So that means, like I said, Haney is pretty much letting go of all four of those belts. And I'm sorry to say it. I'm not saying he's ducking, but I'm also saying that decision was probably made above Frank Martin's pay grade. Because unfortunately, we have the good old divisions between Top Rank and PBC dealing with here. And Abraham and Al Heyman, they normally would not want to do business with each other unless they absolutely have to. This was a case where, on one moment, it felt like they had to, but if the WBC belt is opening up, then the WBA, WBO, and IPF belts are going to open up, which means different avenues for Frank Martin that don't involve dealing particularly with Top Rank are open for him to get a belt and probably still get something close to the pay that he probably would have gotten with Shakur. But that to me is probably the sun test, because one moment you're thinking you're agreeing to this fight, the second, but then another moment you're walking away from it. That tells me, yeah, the decision was made above your pay grade.
We'll see where this goes. Shakur is already calling for a fight with Edwin De Los Santos, who I believe is the next highest available ranked challenger. Will Stevenson and Martin reopen negotiations? Will Stevenson and De Los Santos end up fighting for the vacant WBC lightweight title? We'll keep you updated on the situation, on this evolving, very fluid situation here on Pound for Pound Boxing Report. Also, want both of your opinions on this other news, um, and get this conversation started with you, Gail. For years, you've been an advocate of women's boxing, of women fighting 3-minute rounds, right? Well, you mentioned Serrano's name in the discussion about Mikaela Mayer and Natasha Jonas. It was announced that Serrano's next fight is coming up, mandatory title defense in October against WBO mandatory challenger Danilo. Ramos going to fight October 27th, I believe, in Orlando. The fight is going to be not only 3-minute rounds, it's going to be 12 rounds, right? 12 3-minute rounds, same as men. Well, in a story that I personally wrote for Three Kings Boxing, please check out threekingsboxing.com, your source for pure, unadulterated boxing information. Shout out to the entire 3KB crew. 2K, the man who's behind Three Kings Boxing. Bo, who you've heard on the show numerous times, senior writer, head of media relations. Shout out to Bakari, senior writer. Yours truly is a senior writer. Shout out to Red, who's our editor behind the scenes, all the contributors over at Three Kings Boxing. When it comes to this fight between Serrano and Ramos, Mauricio Suleiman, the president of the WBC, the World Boxing, the WBC has announced that they will not sanction this fight with Amand Serrano, who is undisputed champion at 126 pounds. Had an interview on Chris Mannix's podcast, which is yet to drop officially, but I personally heard the interview. And he basically gave like this physiological, biological reasoning behind the WBC's position, and cited this scientific study and that scientific study about women are more at risk for concussions, other medical factors. Mannix tried to push back with the other studies that show the contrary. Anyway, a lot of conversation has ensued following that video clip that Mannix posted here on social media. Opposites argument. Some argue that they believe that they agree with Suleiman. Others believe that Suleiman is thwarting progress. He's getting in the way of progress, right? Your reaction to the WBC's decision, as well as the comments, the rationale that Suleiman gave during that interview with Chris Mannix.
So that interview actually aired several weeks ago on Chris Mannix's podcast, Boxing with Chris Mannix, which is through iHeartMedia. It's a lengthy interview with Suleiman, and I recommend it to anybody who wants to hear what Suleiman has to say. You know, love him, hate him, get frustrated with him. I will say this for Suleiman. He answers every question put to him. He does not refuse interviews. He's willing to back him and himself and the WBC up. The WBC paid to have a study done, I believe through UCLA, about women and boxing, head injuries, CTE, and the study reportedly revealed that women are more prone to concussion from head trauma than men are. And it's this, it was called the so-called pink concussion. So based on that single study, the WBC believes women should not be fighting 3-minute rounds and should not be fighting 12-round fights. So they will not sanction title fights under WBC rules that exceed 2 minutes and exceed 10 rounds. So if you want a WBC belt, that's the deal. Now, nothing prevents women professionals in states where the rules permit it, and in most of the states where major boxing cards take place, New Jersey, New York, California, Nevada, the UK, there are rules under which if both fighters agree, and there are different rules that govern championship fights, but in essence, if both fighters agree, 3-minute rounds are permitted. What is very unusual about the Serrano fight, more than the 3-minute rounds, is the 12-round fight. The last major fight I recall with women champions fighting 3-minute rounds was Sinisa Estrada and Marlon Esparza's bloody war several years ago in Los Angeles. Those were 3-minute rounds. And to their credit, it was a very exciting fight, but it was only 10 rounds. The last person most of us recall fighting 3-minute rounds is longtime veteran fighter Layla McCarter. She has fought 12-round, 3-minute rounds. But
Did so back in 2007.
Yeah, 2007. I was just going to say 16 years ago. So good for Amanda Serrano and her opponent for agreeing to this. That is another notch in history for her, another accomplishment for Serrano. She is concerned with legacy. She is concerned with blazing a trail. So her WBC belt isn't in play. It's a non-factor. She's still going to do it, and I'll be very interested to see what happens. Now, having said all that, cynics among us wonder if the real reason there is opposition to the 3-minute rounds or the 12-round fights is that it is easier to put a women's fight on a card, and it is much less expensive. It costs a lot less to stage a woman's fight because they aren't fighting as many rounds and they aren't fighting as many minutes. And that is the argument against paying them the equivalent to what the men make. And I'll leave it at that.
Going to read as much as I can verbatim what Suleiman had to say, Daniel. In his words, we will never allow women to fight 3-minute rounds. This is medical and scientific. If we go into facts of reality, why would you change women's boxing? It's so exciting and it's great at 2 minutes. It's a different pace. He went on to say that the neck area has a different structure. The menstrual period brings a very different situation into the hormones in the women when they are going through that process. The ratio of concussions is higher for women than men. We will not be in a popularity contest. Many times we have to protect boxers from themselves. We have to protect them and put the rules into their protections. This has caused a lot of reaction from the boxing community. Some agreeing with Suleiman, others vehemently disagreeing with him. What say you uh, about the situation and about again his reasoning behind their decision? But again, and some have argued that his argument again pushing back against progress. Even I've even heard the sexism word used to describe Suleiman and his comments. Your thoughts?
Well, first, I will say this. The study that Mauricio is referencing is an old study, but there have been other studies that have gone afterwards that have more or less debunked a lot of the findings the report Mauricio's hanging on to. So there's that. That being said, I can understand hating on Mauricio for this because it's a dumb move. If you think about it, if Mendoza and Paco are okay with it, Mauricio technically should be okay with it too. But one characteristic that Mauricio has said it, other than his openness to answer questions, is he tends to be consistent, if not a bit stubborn, in a lot of his positions. I'll give you the best other example. His insistence that Dmitry Bivol, because his passport is Russian, and because he's made it a point saying he will not sanction fights with Russian nationals over the war in Ukraine, that's the main roadblock right now that stood in the way between the undisputed fight between Bivol and Beterbiev. And it would still wind up being the case if Beterbiev loses to Callum Smith. So there's that roadblock, but he's been consistent in that position. Also, like, I'm Latino, I know that. Latino men, we are stubborn bastards at times. And this is a case to me where he's being really, really, really stubborn. Because despite what Gail mentioned, that, yeah, it's a little, sometimes it's economically more feasible, a lot more economically viable to have women only fight 2-minute rounds, only fight 10 rounds. It gets things a little bit faster, it makes things go smoother. But we have seen in the last year alone that notion be completely thrown out the window by Katie Taylor, by Amanda Serrano, and Shotton Cameron. We saw Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano sell out Madison Square Garden. They weren't the co-main. They weren't hangers on to where the main event was to men. They were the main event.
Same with Shields and Marshall.
Yep. Same with Shields and Marshall. Same with Taylor and Cameron.
And if you want to throw Shields and Marshall, if I'm going to throw Shields and Marshall in there, I have to throw in Mayer and Bumgarner.
Exactly. There has been example after example after example that women's boxing is not only marketable, it is profitable. But we've also had a lot of questions over how some fights turned out. Best example, yeah, the Amanda Serrano Katie Taylor fight. Would you think that Katie Taylor would have survived, would have lasted, or would have lasted all 12 rounds of that fight if it were 12 rounds or 3 minutes? Probably not. Not the way Amanda was in her. And there's also a question there with Marshall and Shields. If it was 12 minutes, 3 rounds, would Marshall have found an opening with Clarissa where we would have hurt, or would Clarissa have been able to hurt her and able to get knocked down? Because as exciting and as fast-paced as women's boxing has been, the main knock of it has been we don't see knockouts, we don't see highlight reels in that area. One of the main stopping blocks in that is Soon as a fighter starts building momentum, the round's over. You can't have that at that stage if you're gonna keep growing into it. Like, I understand Mauricio's stubbornness. Like, I get where he's coming from being stubborn and doing it, but at a certain point, you have to give up the ghost, man. There's been enough scientific and enough economic evidence to show you that women are ready to fight 3-minute rounds. And they deserve it at this stage because for the past year and a half, they've been the ones that have been doing what a lot of the men have not wanted to do in the sport, which is put their titles on the line, make history, be undisputed. They have done that at a lot. Women have done that at a lot more frequent rate than men have. It's about time to be rewarded for it.
Comment here from Mitch in the chat. He says, "I don't want to hear from Suleiman. I don't want to hear from sanctioning bodies at all." And many people will agree with Mitch's comments. Here's the thing for me: in that interview, Mauricio Suleiman said that if there's if there's medical science, if there's medical opinions that offer a contrary opinion to what he and the WBC have right now, he's willing to hear them. My response is, are you really, sir? Because there's, as Gail noted, there's plenty of evidence that would argue that it's perfectly fine for women to fight 3-minute rounds. It's perfectly fine for women to compete in 12-round bouts, right? And if he's going to offer the physical and certainly the biological arguments, throwing menstrual cycles in there, that's the same argument. And I know this is a different sport and context matters. That's the same argument you used to hear from years when it comes to women competing in long distance racing, particularly marathons, right? If he's going to use that argument that women are quote unquote more susceptible to injuries when it comes to boxing and whatnot, well, the other studies has also shown that women are more susceptible when it comes to knee injuries, particularly ligament injuries, right? And yet women are allowed to compete in women college basketball at the same 40-minute rate as the men. Women compete in the WBA, WNBA. Women have the WNBA, right? Even though we know that they're more likely to suffer ACL injuries, and no one's stopping that. So I don't get that rationale. Daniel mentioned that Suleiman is stubborn, and I think that is what we're seeing here, because Daniel, you mentioned the rule when it comes to Bivol. That's just stupid. He's just using a technicality here, and at a certain level allowing politics to play into their decision, and it's presenting a roadblock into a fight that many boxing fans want to see. That is Bivol versus Bertobiev for undisputed status at 175. And it really doesn't make any sense when it comes to the situation with Bivol, since if you want to get technical here, both Bertobiev and Bivol are quote unquote Russian. He's just using the fact that Bertobiev has Canadian citizenship, and that stance should not prevent a fight between Bivol and Bertobiev happening. To many boxing fans, it doesn't make any sense. And in that situation is an unnecessary rule. I think in this situation, the stubbornness of Suleiman is getting in the way here, particularly when there's plenty of evidence that just suggests that it is fine for women to fight 3-minute rounds. It is fine for women to fight 12-round fights. And if women want to fight 12-round fights, they want to fight 3-minute rounds, if everything is being fair here, they should be allowed that opportunity. And I don't get why Suleiman, why the WBC want to be so dogmatic in their position Daniel Gill, I'll give you the final word here before we move on to fights that's happening this weekend.
Money talks. That's it.
Money, and pride talk. Let's keep this in mind. WBC is the green belt, the belt that Mexican champions are the ones that tend to want to get the most. If you suddenly have female Mexican champions saying we don't want to deal with the WBC if they don't want to do this, the money will talk.
If there was a high-profile women's champion from Mexico who could make a lot. Okay, how can I put this?
Senicia.
There you go. Thank you. Let's just say that Senicia Estrada wants to fight Yokasta Valle for undisputed at 108 pounds, and they want to go 12 rounds, 3 minutes. Will he stop that fight?
He won't stop it. He won't stop it, but he won't sanction it.
And that would be a shame. That would be a shame. If Shields wants to fight a rematch with Savannah Marshall for undisputed 168, or the winner of Savannah Marshall and Sadeja Green, if Shields wants to fight the winner of Savannah Marshall and Sadeja Green, and the stipulation that Shields throws out is that she wants 12 3-minute rounds, will Suleiman have the nerve to stand on his square and say, no, we're not going to sanction it?
I seriously doubt that will ever come from Claressa Shields. I just don't think that's even a factor.
Just throwing out that scenario.
I think Suleiman would say no, and I think Shields would back down.
Yeah, Shields probably wouldn't fight that off. It would be somebody like Senicia or like Valle or Marlon. It would be it would be those type of fighters that would do it. Claressa, at this stage, she's done a lot already, and she doesn't really need the WBC. Let's be honest.
It's interesting. It's again. If the women want to do it, don't go and let them do it. Don't go and let them do it. I get on a certain level, I get Suleiman's position, but there's just other arguments that says otherwise that offer a counter perspective, and I wish he would put more of that into consideration before he hands down makes this the final decision. So a hot topic at least, and I've just felt that it needed to be discussed since there's been a lot of talk back and forth, again, all over boxing social media and all over message boards. Let's move on to some other. Let's move on to get to these fights that's going to happen this weekend. I guess the big bout of the weekend. Luis Alberto Lopez defending the IBF 126-pound belt against Joet Gonzalez. Alberto Lopez, of course, coming off of a 5th-round stoppage against Michael Conlan over in Northern Ireland. I'm very impressed by Alberto Lopez, Gail. He won the belt from Josh Warrington December last year. And the thing about Lopez, when I watch him, Gail, it doesn't seem to most people when they watch him that he's doing a whole lot. But when I observe him, when I've seen him fight, whether it's the fight against Warrington or especially the fight against Conlan, he does a lot of things that he does a lot of slick things in there. I love his eye discipline, the way that he can punch, he can see shots within the storm, within a flurry. Very subtle defense, very good puncher to the head and body. I think he's slick. I think he's underrated at featherweight. Joet Gonzalez, just to me, he seems to be a perennial contender. If the champion is on his game, I see him winning. I see no way that Joet Gonzalez could win this fight. I just think that that Lopez is just a level above.
Yeah, without question. People look at Lopez's record and say, 28-2, that's not so great. He's only got 16 knockouts. Well, he hasn't lost since 2019, and that last loss was on a classic Thompson boxing card. Back in the day in 2019 to Ruben Villa. So no shame in that. And it was a very close decision, razor thin 96-94 type of card. Well, except for Dr. Lou Moret's card, but hey, Dr. Lou Moret. So since then, he's taken on and beaten everybody. He kept busy in the bubble during the pandemic. He fought in Mexico during the pandemic. And being willing to get out there, stay busy. Listen up, everybody. Eventually, you stay busy, you keep yourself in position, you get opportunities, you take a chance on yourself. He went into the Lion's Den to fight Josh Warrington, beat him. Michael Conlon beat him, both in the UK. And now he gets to come home. And, this is a little bit of a victory lap for him. He is from Mexico, but he'll feel very at home in Corpus Christi, Texas. Joet Gonzalez, Golden Boy had very high hopes for him for many years. And, he just couldn't get past the top tier opponents. So he puts on a good fight. He makes a very good, honest effort, but he's just barely above journeyman status at this point. I do expect a good action fight, but I don't expect Gonzalez will really challenge Lopez. This is an excellent opportunity after his two really big wins in the UK to get him back in front of an American audience, remind them what he's all about, keep the fan base happy. If it wasn't a weekend where there's just so few major cards going on, I think that his fight would get lost. So this is a golden opportunity for him to be the biggest fight really being staged this weekend. And it is a Friday night card, not a Saturday night card. So it is on the 15th. So don't tune in too late or you'll miss it.
On the undercard, Daniel. Excuse me my apologies for the echo during the show. Just some technical issues on our part. On the undercard, Daniel, Jermaine Ortiz. Last time we remember him, fought Lomachenko. Many people remember him for his close loss against Lomachenko. There are some in the boxing community who felt that Ortiz beat Loma that night. Lomachenko returning after a lengthy layoff. Ortiz is fighting a guy by the name of Moran. I've seen a little bit of Moran in the ring. I was very impressed by what I saw from Ortiz. Skilled guy, fast guy, big guy for the weight, who can move. I just think that after of what I've seen from Antonio Moran, I just think that Jermaine Ortiz is a better fighter here.
Yeah, and Jermaine has pretty much been carrying that little chip on his shoulder that many people feel that he beat Loma for a good while. He's going to use that as fuel. I wouldn't blame him for it, especially with the way everything's shaping up in the division. I fully expect for him to take care of business.
Again, that those cards are going to happen Friday, as Gail noted. It's going to happen on ESPN. On Saturday, on the Zone, a lightweight who I don't think is at the top of the lightweight of the 135 pound landscape, Gale, but I think he's very, very entertaining. William Zepeda, exciting style, power to boot. Going to fight Mercito Gesta, who's tough nut, right? In that 130, 135 pound weight range. Zepeda's, lingering on the world title fight. What do you think of his upcoming fight against Gesta?
It's not too dissimilar to the fight between Lopez and Gonzalez. Zepeda is by far the A side. Gesta earned the opportunity to take Zepeda on by beating Jojo Diaz, which was a bit of a surprise. Gesta is a veteran fighter. Again, a lot like Joet Gonzalez in that anytime that he had that title fight opportunity, he could just never quite clear the finish line. But he is an action fighter. You have a Mexican versus a Filipino-born fighter. Always fun. I like Zepeda a lot. He is under the radar. He is a machine. His fight against Jojo Diaz was a barn burner. Set a lot of punch stat records for activity by both guys. Zepeda is from the Mexico City area. He's grown up in and trained at altitude all his life. He doesn't just go up to camp for altitude training. That's literally in his blood. His stamina is insane, and he can punch. So he's still building up a fan base in the United States, but he is very well known in Mexico. He is beginning to be much better known in the southwestern United States. Getting in front of audiences in Texas is perfect for him. And, we'll see what he's all about. I take that back. Where are they fighting? They're not in Texas, are they? That's the Top Rank card.
That fight is happening in California.
In California, yeah. So, he has a fan base here. There's a lot of local fighters on the undercard. So, not championship level fighting by any means, but it'll be, a very good bargain for your ticket dollar in particular. And hey, if you're a DAZN subscriber, you're looking for some boxing this weekend, you could do a lot worse.
I know it won't happen. It's not going to happen. But look, Zepeda is ranked number 2 by the BA, and Isaac Cruz is ranked number 1. I know the word on the street is that Cruz is going to fight a rematch against Gervonta Davis. But if that were not to happen, I would love to see a fight with Cruz and Zepeda in a WBA eliminator at 135. That would be lights out.
You'd think so, but Cruz's last fight was not too great. I don't know what was up with that. This last fight was a snoozer, but Zepeda always makes for a very exciting fight.
On the undercard, Daniel, you have of Zepeda and Gesta, have one of the best women's fighters in the world, in my opinion. Mentioned her name during our discussion about Suleiman, and the woman I'm talking about here is Jocasta Valier, 2-time unified champion at 105 and 108. She returns on the undercard to defend her unified 105-pound belts against Maria Santizo, right? Valier was in attendance for Superbad's last fight. Basically said that Superbad, you may be the main event here, but I fill out stadiums and you fill out theaters. I loved it. She gets this fight here. She's the favorite. I hope she wins because ultimately I want to see Jocasta Valier and Sinisa Superbad Estrada in 2024.
Oh, yeah. And we have to remember, about probably a year and a half ago, we wouldn't be saying things like this about Valier. But she has improved very, very greatly in that year and a half. Because I think she understands the light at the end of the tunnel is Sinisa. And it's the big marquee fight, especially for her native Costa Rica, that she can actually do and represent her country fairly well against a very well-established, a very popular Mexican-American champion in Sinisa. This is her dress rehearsal. She knows she cannot mess this up, and I think she has the skill set to take care of business. And just like she showed up for Sunisia's fight, I fully expect Sunisia to be sitting there and ready to come in and handle business. And like when I mentioned when we talked about the women have been the ones that have been making the fights that make history for Undisputed.
And
This,
listen,
mhm.
Estrada, she's earned the reputation of being called super bad, but if you watch the last few fights, she's shown herself to be vulnerable in some spots, and that despite her unique style, she can be hit. And if there's anyone at 105, 108, 112 range who stands a chance of beating her, I think is Yokasa Valley, who's a very, very, very talented fighter, highly skilled boxer, with underrated punching power to boot. So we will see how Valier does in her upcoming fight against Enciso again. I know I shouldn't be rooting for fighters in that regard, but a fight for undisputed status at 105 pounds between Valier and Super Bad Estrada is one of the best fighters, one of the best fights in the sport, men or women, just one of the best fights in boxing, period. Let's move on. One more fight here. Didn't mention it, didn't put it in the docket. Gail made note of it privately before we begin the show. Hit that live button. And Glenn DeZern, who is the husband of former undisputed 168-pound women's champion Franchon Cruz DeZern, fighting this weekend, or excuse me, on Friday. Fight TV card, Gail. And even though he's fighting, I suspect that a significant portion of the audience will have their eyes on Franchon Cruz DeZern, on his wife, who's usually in the corner of her husband when he fights.
Yeah, I don't know for sure whether she will be there as trainer corner woman for him, but she usually is. If he's working with someone else, I guarantee you she will be there. The fight card's taking place in Richmond, Virginia. And heck, if you have Fight TV and you want to tune in, it is Friday night. I think that's a gas, a professional fighting couple. And good luck to Glenn on the fight. He's fighting an opponent who is 34 and 38. I can't even make that up. I think that was the record of his opponent. So should be interesting. He fights at super bantamweight. And also in that card is Jerry Forrest, of all things. He is in the main event, heavyweight, American heavyweight. Jerry has dallied a little bit with the Team Combat League, the team boxing concept that just wrapped up its first season. He had a couple of fights. This is the setup where teams fight single 3-minute rounds, and there are 18 fighters that fight around in rotation to add up all their scores. So you essentially have all the scores and what makes up an 18-round fight with a brief intermission. He lost both his total combat or team combat league fights, unfortunately, in his short stay there. So he has now gone back to legitimate boxing. And I'm sure there was a lot of local talent and other fights on that card. Folks, when there isn't major boxing on, what we would consider, major championship level talent at least, or prospects, support these regional cards, support the club fights. This is where talent develops. Last weekend, we had the return of what used to be Thompson Boxing. It's now been resurrected as Casanova Boxing Network, CBN. Glad to see them back. And I guarantee there is a regional card somewhere close to you that you should be paying attention to.
100%. I can't agree more. And I think we're going to shut down things on that note. I want to thank Mitch for checking us out in the live chat, for joining us in the live chat and his comments and questions there. I'll go around the panel, begin the show with ladies first. In the show with ladies first, Gail from nyfights.com for those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to talk media, for those who are in need of a good PR person. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nod, nod. Professional fighters, because we know PR folks are something that's really lacking in this sport to control some of these boxers say who, because let's face it, a lot of fighters often speak before they think. I'll put it that way. Or for those who want to check you out occasionally on TMZ Live, let the folks know where they can find you.
Well, the place to find me, the one and only place that I really operate in boxing, is nyfights.com and all those social networks.
And I'll go to you, Daniel, for boxing news and the Inscriber for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk pro wrestling, including the situation with TMZ, well, not TMZ, but with CM Punk and him getting the boot during our time off and that fiasco. Or for those who want to talk about all things Miami Heat when it comes to the NBA, let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Yes, folks, you can still find me on Twitter, RAWQZ99, whatever it's called, except I'm never calling it X. I don't care how much Elon wants to make it so. But definitely catch me on there. And yeah, CM Punk managed to do a Craig from Friday, got fired on his day off. And that is just an entire mess. Like you can just go on a diatribe with the insanity that is the leadership structure of AEW.
Yeah. We can spend the next half hour. I could give Daniel the floor. He can talk about that situation for the next. Forget half hour, hour and a half to try to unwrap that situation when it comes to CM Punk. But yeah, that situation. But yeah, that just for those who want to talk music, fitness, boxing, you know what it is with me on Twitter, because I agree with Daniel. I refuse to call it X. You can check me out there, Brother JR, at Brother JR76, for those who want to talk music, fitness, boxing, and fragrance, including check me out and check out my scent of the days. I usually try to post a scent of the day. If not every day, then every other day. You can see me do that. You can check out my fragrance stuff on IG and TikTok, Brother JR SC. On the next episode, we will recap Luis Alberto Lopez and his fight. Excuse me, technical issues here. Luis Alberto Lopez and his fight against Joet Gonzalez, Jermaine Ortiz against Antonio Moran. Again, that's going to be on ESPN on Friday, September 15th. That's going to be in Corpus Christi, Texas. Also on that card, Xander Zayas, he's returning to the ring to fight Roberto Valenzuela. We will also recap William Zepeda, his fight against Mercito Gesta, September 16th. That's going to be on the Zone, Commerce, California, of course, on the undercard of that. You got your Costa Valley again, defending her unified minimum weight titles against Maria Santizo. We didn't mention it during this show, but also Angel Fierro, also on the 15th in Tijuana. He's fighting in a 12-round lightweight bout. Erica Cruz, who gave a valiant effort earlier this year in a defeat at the hands of Amanda Serrano. She returns to the ring on the undercard of Fierro's bout. Again, those two bouts are going to be on the Zone. And we're going to do a preview of the rematch between Zilly Zhang and Joe Joyce. As many remember, Zhang scored upset stoppage win over Joe Joyce earlier this spring on the undercard of Zhang Joe Joyce 2. The return of Anthony Yard He fights in a 10-round bout. Also, we're going to preview Richardson Hitchens. He's going to fight Jose Zepeda. Jessup on the undercard of that. That's going to be September 23rd in Orlando, Florida. On the undercard of Hitchens and Zepeda, Jessup McCaskill going to fight a unification bout against Sandy Ryan. WBA, WBC, vacant WBO welterweight titles are on the line. And also on that same card, Austin Ammo Williams is going to fight Steve Rolls in a 10-round bout. So again, we will talk about all of those fights. Again, I want to thank Mitch Pryor for his comments. So this has been episode 419 of Pound for Pound Boxing Report. For Gail of NYFights.com, for Daniel of the Inscriber and for Boxing News, I am your host, Michael. We will see you guys next time. Everyone have a good one. Good evening. Good night.